that.
Okay, today my story comes out of the great state of Virginia and has to do with our favorite THC isomer, Delta-8. So the title of the article, it comes from the Hemp Today, and it's the Virginia judge calls Delta-8 a credible threat in setback ruling against hemp stakeholders. So just as Georgia says it's okay to make Delta-8, here's another state also in the Confederacy, right below the bagel biscuit line. Um, the story reads as such. Virginia hemp stakeholders suffered a setback in their efforts to halt enforcement of state rules that ban Delta-8 THC. In opinion this week, a federal judge turned back a requested injunction in an industry lawsuit that aimed to block a state law passed earlier this year, leaving rules in effect that carry stiff fines for businesses that continue to sell Delta-8 and any other products that exceeds the total limits for natural and synthetic forms of THC. The rule sets strict limits on the total THC in hemp food products such as gummies and other candies. U.S. District Judge Leonie M. Brinkema ruled that the state had not overstepped its authority to regulate hemp in a way that conflicted with federal law nor interfered with interstate commerce. The state demonstrated that Delta-8 THC is a credible threat to the Virginia population and that there should be strong public interest in protecting the citizens of the Commonwealth from substances like Delta-8, including a vulnerable population such as children from hospitalizations and poisoning, Brinkema said. The decision to advance that public interest was done by the elected policymakers of Virginia, and this court must defer to those political and social welfare judgments, she added, signaling the hemp interests in the state are facing an uphill battle in their fight against the new state law. Synthetic THC. Delta-8 is a synthetic compound based from hemp-based CBD. Oh, I'm surprised that someone in the lay press has actually got that right for the first time. That's very remarkable. By contrast, Delta 9 THC, which comes from marijuana plants, is the natural derivative. Delta 8 has proven a popular alternative to marijuana in Virginia and across the U.S. The court's initial opinion, issued Monday, denied a request by three parties who joined in the lawsuit against the state: Northern Virginia Hemp, uh, and Agriculture, and Franny's Pharmacy, spelt with an F, both hemp sellers, and Rose Lane, a private citizen who claims she has been blocked from acquiring Delta-8 THC to ease her arthritis. The lawsuit remains under consideration by the court, but the new rules remain in place. The Virginia law targeted by the hemp industry plaintiffs initially or initiated a crackdown on edibles and other products containing Delta-8, which has become widely available at smoke shops and other retail outlets across Virginia and many other states. Plaintiffs argued that Virginia overruled provisions in the 2018 Farm Bill, which legalized hemp and all downstream products. If you could turn hemp into ricin poison, or you could turn hemp into some of the most noxious compounds known to man, you can't. But if you could, would those be legal too? It's interesting to consider that. Um, but the historic measure failed to take into account the possibility that producers might make psychoactive products from hemp-derived CBD, which is possible in the lab. Brinkema concluded that the federal hemp laws do not prevent states from regulating or restricting some hemp products. If Congress chooses to make a substance here, industrial hemp, as defined by its Delta 9 THC level, legal at the federal level with respect to the Controlled Substances Act, that means that Congress has mandated that the substance must be legal in every state, Brinkema wrote. Nor does it mean that Congress has mandated that any product simply produced from industrial hemp as one ingredient or derivative must be legalized in every state legislature. Stakeholders had also said that the restrictions on food in the bill threaten the market for full spectrum CBD products that have helped epileptic children, as they criticized a provision to set that the total THC barrier for food at a ratio of CBD to THC as 25-1. So 25-1 represents a natural hemp extract. But when you start getting more like 4-1, 5-1, or some of these 2-1s, this is no longer natural. This has been somehow chemically altered. The absence of clarity from the federal government and regulators, many states are grappling with the Delta-8 THC issue. Court rulings this year in Maryland, Arkansas, and Texas put temporary protection in place for Delta-8 producers. While those states for now have shielded Delta-8 under a strict legal interpretation that highlights the conflict between state and federal hemp laws, changes expected at the federal level could reverse that perhaps by the end of the year. The U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration had indicated that it intends to change the federal drug control laws to ban highly concentrated synthetic THC, such as Delta 8. Also, in the 2023 Farm Bill now being debated, it is likely to draw a more narrow definition of hemp that excludes such products. The measure is expected to be passed by the end of the year. A group of cannabis regulators from several states in August sent a letter to Congress suggesting a national framework be established for all hemp-based cannabinoids, including CBD, and any downstream products made from CBD, such as Delta-8, suggesting a comprehensive regulatory approach that accounts for all cannabinoid products is urgently needed. Consumers or have for years been at the mercy of a dodgy CBD and Delta-8 THC makers who have done some serious damage to hemp's reputation overall, causing food and fiber markets to also hit the skids. The synthetic compound Delta-8 emerged in the wake of the CBD boom or bust that followed the passage of the 2018 Farm Bill. The downturn left CBD producers looking for an outlet for their pent-up supplies. They found that among Delta-8 producers working in the semi-gray market based on the loophole in the federal law, they had customers. Delta-8, a kind of hemp product that the Farm Bill never intended, is widely available at common retail outlets in packaging that mimics leading brands of candy and other treats. Products containing hemp synthesized intoxicants present a health and safety risk to consumers because they're not regulated with packaging/labeling and testing requirements like state legal adult use and medical marijuana are. Seth Goldberg, a cannabis law specialist at the Philadelphia-based Duane Morris law firm, concluded in an analysis that he wrote of the Virginia situation in his company's blog. In defining hemp as it did in the passing of the 2018 Farm Bill, Congress did not intend to legalize the host of intoxicating cannabinoids derived from hemp while maintaining the prohibition against Delta-9 THC in marijuana, Goldberg said. The new Virginia law also transferred oversight and registration to operate retail outlets and packaging, labeling, and testing requirements to the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, to the Virginia Cannabis Control Authority, and provide state money to teams of inspectors to monitor the production of these cannabis products being sold in Virginia. Possession and home cultivation of marijuana became legal in Virginia in 2021, but marijuana sales in the state are strictly restricted to licensed medical dispensaries. So that's my story for today. Again, I think it's this back and forth between states who are looking to protect the Delta-8 hemp processing producers, and also the regulations that are put in place to protect the children and protect the other vulnerable populations in those states that have access to these hemp derived psychoactive cannabinoids. That's my story today from the state of Vermont, home of snowliage. I'd love to hear what you guys have to think about this. Again, Dr. Mark from Vermont.
Dr. Mark. I mean, it sounds like Virginia got it kind of right on this, wouldn't you say?
Well, I think this is something that they have to address at the federal level, and I think that it has been addressed in the following way. So when you test hemp plants and hemp plants have lower than 0.3% THC,
Mm-hmm.
that plant is now deemed as hemp, and the USDA washes their hands and they say, we let some farmers grow hemp. At harvest, there is no more regulatory authority by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. When you harvest a food crop, the food that we eat, corn, soybeans, wheat, and all that kind of stuff, well, that then falls into the Food and Drug Administration's regulatory bailiwick. Yeah, I like to use that word. It's basically their territory now, and the FDA has basically dropped the ball on what happens to industrial hemp after that harvesting. If they really want to put restrictions on what you can do with CBD isolate or what you can do with industrial hemp, don't look to the Farm Bill and the USDA. We have to look to the Food and Drug Administration because that stuff has already been classified as hemp. Now, what the hemp producers do with it and what CBD producers and people who are making Delta-8, that regulatory has to be under the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act, which is one of the
Mm-hmm.
things that the Food and Drug Administration enforces. Now, it is against the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act to put the active ingredient of an FDA approved drug into food, feed, or cosmetics.
Correct.
So the whole CBD industry that's making tinctures, sodas, seltzers, things that you could put on your skin like topicals, they're basically in violation
Yep.
of the FD&C Act.
I say this all the
So
time.
yeah, and you're totally right. So what they needed to do, what they is the FDA needed to do, is they needed to make an exception for CBD to the FD&C Act. I think they've done the same thing for caffeine. That's why, caffeine is an active ingredient that's improved in some weight loss drugs and whatnot, but there's still caffeine in Coca-Cola and caffeine in things like Mountain Dew. And so caffeine, I think, was grandfathered in because I think this regulation was put into place after people were already using caffeine as an ingredient. But I think a similar thing has to happen to CBD because according to the law now, the only people who are allowed to dispense CBD are GW or Jazz Pharmaceuticals who got the FDA approval, and you should be buying all your CBD through a prescription at Walgreens and not going down to some local shop to buy tinctures and gummies and
Yeah,
internet and
you
all
should be
that kind of
going and getting a prescription for Epidiolex and just getting it delivered to you
right.
like that. That's what they want.
But Jason, so the Controlled Dangerous Substance Act, which we all hate, is part of the legacy of the
Yep.
Nixon administration and their knee-jerk reaction to ripping up the report that said that cannabis should be descheduled and removed from the Controlled Dangerous Substance Act. Nixon and the Nixon administration put it in as a Schedule One substance. We all know, that cannabis has multiple medical uses. So the Schedule One listing of cannabis flies in the face of the huge list of medical applications that cannabis has. In fact, one of those applications is the neuroprotective properties of cannabis, right? Which was actually a patent that was held by the United States government.
Yep.
So
Yep.
when they smuggled a bunch of cannabinoids back from Meshulam's lab in the 70s back to the Bethesda lab, the group there at the NIH did all kinds of interesting research on it, and they actually patented the neuroprotective properties of cannabis. So here's one area of the government saying, and the U.S. Patent and Trade Organization, they just look at basically the claims in the patent, and if you could back up the claims with data that proves your claims, they don't give a shit about Schedule 1, Schedule 2. They don't care what the compound looks like. If you could demonstrate in your patent, and the folks at the NIH demonstrated that it had neuroprotective properties. So how could the government be saying that we're going to grant this patent on neuroprotective properties to cannabinoids? The DEA still maintains that there's no medical use.
Mm-hmm.
It's bullshit. So that needs to come unwound. But the other thing you have to realize is that they realized, I think, that Delta-8 was a psychoactive cannabinoid, and Delta-8 is mentioned by name in the Controlled Dangerous Substance Act. So as long as tetrahydrocannabinols, code 7370, are part of the schedule listing, they need to basically remove it from the schedule. It's not dangerous, so it doesn't need to be controlled. So once they remove cannabis and they remove THC from the schedules, yeah, then it can be looked at, I guess, as a psychoactive substance that should be regulated on the same list as, I don't know, tobacco and alcohol.
Yep. Yep. I couldn't agree more with all of that, Dr. Mark. And
Well,
any thoughts on that, Dr. T?
yeah, I'm not a fan of regulating any substance. I'm a fan of
Mm-hmm.
education. We can't stop people from taking what they're going to take. It's dramatic that we try to stop. Prohibition is a problematic uh, idea, and it gets us into this rabbit hole of what should you take and what shouldn't you take. The role of the government is to educate. Even if it's a poison, somebody wants to sell a poison, as long as you know to look at the package or understand what's in there and decide, hey, I'm not going to take that substance because it's dangerous. But to say you can't put it out there is just, it goes down a rabbit
I
hole.
mean, I mean,
Well,
We'll be
I,
chasing.
couldn't you?
I would maintain that ending cannabis prohibition will end this market for recreational synthetics. Period. If
Yeah.
people have unfettered access to cannabis and it's good, high quality cannabis, they won't need Delta-8. They won't need HHC. They won't need all these other things. So I think cannabis prohibition is partially responsible
It
for
is.
this
That's true.
recreational synthetic market.
That's true because people want things and they're going to get what they can access based off their geographical location. That is 100% true. 100% true. But we got to keep this train moving. We're going to move right
Wait,
on
wait, wait,
in.
wait, wait,
Oh,
wait,
go ahead.
wait, wait.
Oh,
Before we leave,
yeah.
I just
I'm
want to
sorry.
say, listening to all this, I think I've decided that I like Delta-8. I like it because what better way to point out the hypocrisy of these lawmakers, especially in states like Texas, where we can't smoke cannabis here. We can't do any of that. But Delta-8's okay. We can't smoke cannabis because it's such a bad thing. But Delta-8's, it's just, I love the hypocrisy. I love Delta-8 now. Thank you. It's a perfect tool.
I am so glad that we have that
You're
soundbite
welcome.
of you saying that you love Delta-8, Stone Slade.
Hey, don't take it out of context. Don't you take it.
Don't take it out of context.